I have analyzed hundreds of properties over the past several years, and I have this amazing, simple formula I use. You just need to have 3 components of the formula, and you can analyze investment property in any market, from the East Coast to the West Coast to the Midwest, and it also works in any market cycle, whether we're in a recession or a booming market. I'm going to show you that in this video. So this formula that I use has 3 components. We're going to go over all 3 components, and then I'm going to take you to the whiteboard and show you some examples to really drive home what the numbers mean and how you can manipulate them in your market to maximize profit or maximize your offer to make sure you get the deal. I'm about to reveal this incredible formula that works anywhere across the world, but before I do that, I need you to do a little something for me. Would you please like this video, comment in the video if you want, and please subscribe to our channel if you haven't. So the first component in the formula is figuring out an ARV, which just stands for an after repair value. You need to figure out what the house is going to be worth after you're done fixing it up, which can be tricky. You can look and see what a house is worth now, but in 3 to 6 months when you're done with your rehab, you need to know what it's going to sell for if you're taking it to the retail market, or you need to know what it's going to appraise for if you're taking it to the bank, either with the BRRRR strategy to refinance out, or even if you're putting 20% down and wanting to refinance out at that point as well. So you really need to know what the property is going to be worth in the future, which can be tricky, but we kind of have some ways and things that we do that I'm going to show you to help get the best possible prediction of what the property is going to be worth in the future. There's lots of different factors that go into determining the ARV or aftermarket value. I'm going to go over the top 6 that I use right now with you, but like I said, there's a lot of other things to look into. Certain properties have certain unique factors that might make it hard to comp. If you do have a property that has something kind of unique about it and something different that no other property in the area has, I would definitely get a second set of opinion through a real estate agent that knows the area or a investor that knows the area. So definitely get some second opinions if the house is unique. So here's the 6 things that I look at first when determining the after repair value of a property. And if I have to dig in deeper, I do, but these are the first kind of 6 things, the first 6 filters that I go through. The first one is obviously looking at sales in the area, and you need to look at the last 6 months of sales. Looking at a house that sold 15 months ago is not a good comp. A potential seller or a bank is not going to use that. Even if you're looking at something around a year old, 10 months old, that's getting, things change so much through the winter and summer, you know, the actual market cycles that are normal. And when you have some crazy stuff going on like this COVID virus stuff going on, that you know, changes things a lot as well. So you really want to get as recent sales as you can. My benchmark is 6 months. So I look in the same area for a recent sale that happened in the last 6 months as the first filter. The second filter I use is the bed and bath count. That may sound pretty simple, but a 3-bed, 2-bath house is not a comp for a 2-bed, 1-bath house, as simple as that sounds. So you need to be finding houses that have the exact same bed and bath count. If a property is a 3-bedroom, 2 full bath, and a 3-bedroom, 1 full bath, 1 half bath, that's probably okay. An appraiser or a end home buyer can probably differentiate just a little bit difference of the half bath. But if you're looking at you know, even if it's the same square footage, which we'll get into, you know, if it's got 4 or 5 bedrooms and another one has 2 or 3 bedrooms, those aren't quite comparables. You want to give as good, solid information as you can to the end buyer or the appraiser. You don't want them to have to make adjustments, you know, adjusting for 2 less bedrooms or adjusting for 2 more bedrooms, because that's where it can get a little subjective for the person doing the valuation or the person wanting to buy the property. So you want to be able to have as concrete examples as you can, and one way to do that is to be able to give an exact bedroom and bathroom match. The third filter that I use is square footage. You want it to be within 200 square foot is what I use. So if it's an 1,100 square foot house, a 1,200 square foot, a 1,250 square foot house can definitely be a comp. But if it's a 1,100 square foot house, a 1,500 or 1,600 square foot house is pretty hard to sell that as you being able to, you know, be the same. This other property has 500 more square foot or 300 more square foot, 400 more square foot. That house is going to be worth more, so it's not really a great comp for your property. If you're wanting to, if you're discounting for that, then that helps a little bit if you're taking off, 10, 15 grand, something like that for a few hundred square foot. But again, that's subjective. We want things to be concrete and simple and easy for someone that's buying your property or someone that's appraising your property to be able to do that. You don't want them to just pick out how much they're gonna take off because it has less square footage. So the best thing to do is, I say 200 square foot max either way. So if it's a 1,000 square foot house, for example, anything less than 800 square foot, I'm throwing out. Anything more than 1,200 square foot, I'm throwing out. Of course, I would like to be the exact same square footage or within 50 or 100 feet, but sometimes that can be hard. I think having a 200 either way is as much as you want to go, and as close you can get to that same square foot is extremely important. The fourth filter that I run my comparables through is the school district. A lot of school districts, even neighboring school districts in a similar area, can definitely vary on the quality of the school district. So you're going to want to find a property that is in the same school district as your property to actually have a true comp. Even different high schools, but can potentially make a difference in the same school district. So if you can narrow it down to exact high school, that is great as well. But if they're in the same school district in different high schools, that's probably good enough. Obviously, if like I said, if you can narrow down as much as you can, but if you narrow all these down to just quick recap, same exact square footage, exact bed and bath, exact same middle school, high school, and elementary school, that can be really hard to do because you need to have at least 3 comparables to be able to come up with a quality number. So for this step, just finding the same school district is a great way to start. If you can narrow down a little more, that's even better. But just getting in the same school district will really, really help you knowing what the property is going to be worth and having concrete examples. We're going to talk about the 5th filter that I use to determine a value of a property, an ARV of the property. As you can see, we're kind of starting pretty narrow, but we're narrowing down as we go. And what this one is, you want it to be in the same neighborhood if possible, which is hard because a lot of neighborhoods are pretty small, but there's also, where we are in St. Louis, there's a lot of pretty good sized neighborhoods. So if at all possible, you want to be in the same neighborhood, because if it's in the same neighborhood, it probably has a similar style to it, similar feel to it, similar finishes, because more than likely one builder built them all. So that's a great way to even narrow it down even more. This one's a little bit harder, but if you have 7 or 8 comps that are similar, get as close to the house as you can or in the same neighborhood. Sometimes you may be at one end of the neighborhood and then it's a pretty big neighborhood, and then a comp is at the other end of the neighborhood. It's a little bit farther away than maybe a comp that's in the neighborhood right next to it. It's important to be in the same neighborhood if possible, which kind of leads into the 6th tip is if it's in the same neighborhood, that means it's probably built around the same time. So look and see when the property was built. If a property is built in the 50s, they have a different construction style, a different foundations, potentially are cinder block, and different ways they were built as opposed to a house that was built in the 1990s, even if it's in a similar distance. So the goal is to obviously be as close as possible, but also you want to make sure you're kind of built in the same time frame, within, I don't know, 20-ish years is a pretty good marker to have either way. If a house is built 60 years later and it's pretty similar other than that, it's going to be worth more and appraised more than a house that's 6 years older, even if they're both fixed up, just because everything is newer constructed and worn out less. We're gonna give you a little bonus tip real quick. So in St. Louis, there's, I think, 80-something municipalities, all with different rules and all with different ordinances and codes that potentially make their properties worth more or less more. So you can be within a half a mile in St. Louis and have 3 different cities you're in. So that's kind of an important, you can be in the same school district in St. Louis and be in a few different cities. So it's important to see which city you're in and to try to be in that same city, or if you're not quite in the same city, as long as you're in a city that has similar comps and has similar rules and similar regulations, it's probably okay. And if you're in a little bit more of a rural area and you're in different counties, certain counties are a little bit better than other counties. So you kind of got to be aware of those type of things when you're running your comparables and when you're comparing your house to another house. We're going to talk about the second major component that goes into the formula, which is the repair cost. You need to know how much it's going to cost you to fix up the property that you're purchasing. There's 3 major points that go into the repair cost, and I'm even going to throw in a bonus one for you. The first part for determining what your repairs are going to be for your rehab is determining your exit strategy. If you're going to be selling on the retail market, you're potentially probably going to do a little bit nicer finishes, do some more vanity type things, make a little nicer fixtures and a little nicer things that people potentially would want to see in a fixed up house that they're going to be living in. You know, for example, fans. We don't put a ton of fans in our rentals just because it's a maintenance item, but we definitely try to do those in our properties that we put on the retail market because people like to have fans in their rooms, obviously, but it's a maintenance item for rentals that we leave out. So those kind of things, you want to know what your extra strategy is. If you're going to be renting it, you kind of want to make things a little bit more bulletproof, you know, hard surfaces everywhere that kind of wear and tear a little easier. So that kind of thing, you're going to want to know how far you're going to take the actual rehab. And a good way to know that is what the end exit strategy is for it. So that's the first tip when it comes to determining your rehab. The second and most obvious tip when it comes to knowing what your rehab is going to come in at is knowing your prices. Now, there's a lot that goes into this as well. You need to be talking to contractors that you know and trust. If you don't know and trust a contractor to do the work, make sure you're getting 3 bids for every major item done. You should probably do that anyway, but if you have a contractor that you know that does really good work, we have several of those. We don't get 3 bids for everything because it just takes a lot of time. If you're working on one project, that's a little bit different. We have several going at the same time. So we have built relationships with contractors over the years. We treat them right, we pay them on time, they treat us right, they do good quality work at a good price. So being able to know a price by developing a relationship with that contractor is huge. So you're not getting tons of bid for every little thing that you're doing to the house, and you're not really knowing exactly where the numbers are going to come in. That's a little tricky because it's pretty hard to get a contractor to bid everything in the house before you purchase it. You do kind of have to know what things cost, and the way to do that is just through experience and having contractors you know and trust. Another thing to note is if you're going to be doing the work yourself or not. You know, we usually put in $3,000 or $4,000 to paint the inside of a standard house here in St. Louis, a 1,200 to 1,500 square foot house. But if you're doing the work yourself, that's just going to cost you if you're not going to be, paying yourself, which most people don't, they just pay themselves with a profit at the end if they're doing the work themselves, that's going to cost you $500 in paint. So just knowing what you're going to do and not going to do can greatly affect the actual repair costs. The third thing to do is, if you don't know and are new to this, is to go out and find these contractors. Go to the local meetups, go on the local Facebook investment groups and ask for contractors, and a lot of contractors are on those groups. They'll contact you, and if you develop a relationship, you can start it out that way, or go to good investors in your area. Good investors tend to work with good contractors and vice versa. Good contractors tend to work with good investors. So if you know an investor, they're probably more than likely willing to give you their contractor. They want to keep that contractor busy, and if you have a good relationship with them, they want you to treat that contractor the right way and keep that contractor busy and working in the local area. So they're more than likely going to give you their number, and as long as you treat them properly, they'll keep coming back to you and you'll have a good base of contractors to use. The bonus tip is extremely important, and this one took me several rehabs to figure out and actually input when I was figuring out my repair costs, and that is making sure to account for carrying costs. If you're borrowing the money from a bank, a private lender, or a hard money lender, you need to be accounting for that interest every single month, or that's accruing throughout the project, whether they have monthly payments or not. You also need to be accounting for utilities. You also need to be accounting for insurance. All those things add up, especially if it's more than a 3-month project. If it's 4, 5, 6, 7-month project, all of those costs adds up, can be thousands and thousands of dollars. So you could literally be on budget for what you thought you were going to be putting in the property physically, but all those carrying costs can add up to thousands and thousands of dollars. You could be $3, 4, 5, 6, $7,000 over budget and not know it because you didn't account for those carrying costs. So that is a huge thing you need to account for in your formula, is those carrying costs. And a bonus tip I'm going to give you is to put a little fluff on the end. We like to use 10% fluff on a house that needs a lot of work. If it's just a quick in and out, maybe we'll do 5%. So take your total rehab, and if it needs a lot of work, add 10%, and maybe just do that anyway to be safe, especially if you're newer and don't quite know how everything's going to shake out. But definitely add that fluff, because we do 60 plus rehabs a year, and I probably shouldn't tell you this, but not that many of them come in on budget. So the best thing to do is to put that fluff in there. We're getting pretty good. We're usually within 5 or 10%, and if we put that fluff in there, then we're even more likely than not to actually be on budget. But that's 2 bonus tips for you. So the third factor of this formula is the multiplier percentage. I'm gonna explain that to you. We're gonna get a little serious about it, so I'm gonna turn my hat backwards. So the multiplying percentage is basically your profit. You're gonna figure out how much you're gonna multiply in order to figure out your profit. So I'm gonna take you to the whiteboard and go over examples, so this will make more sense as you see the actual numbers. But our multiplying percentage is between 70 and 80%. If it's an extremely competitive deal or it's in a really hot area that you are very confident in your numbers, we multiply it by 80%. If it's in maybe not the best area, you know, you want to leave yourself more fluff, or there's some unknowns in the actual project, or you're wanting to make a bigger percentage because you have other projects on deck. You're working on 2 or 3 other projects and you'd love to get this one, but you don't, you know, you have enough in your pipeline that it's not extremely necessary that you get that. We multiplied that by 70%, or maybe a little less. It kind of depends. A lot of people will just use those other 2 parts of the formula, your ARV and your repair value, and they'll just want to make 20 grand or want to make 30 grand. So that is one way to do it, but I like this way because it just is a little simpler, and you can just adjust one part of it, and you don't have to worry about if it's a $500,000 house or a $100,000 house and how much profit you want to make. You probably want to make 25 or 30 grand on, you know, a $100,000 and $150,000 project, but making 20 or 30 grand on a $500,000 project, you know, there's not as much meat on the bone. So you don't have to adjust that amount. This formula and this multiplier percentage does that for you. So kind of to recap that, and it'll make more sense when we go to the whiteboard here in a second, but we take those other 2 numbers, put them in the formula, and then the multiplier is between 70 and 80%. And if it's 80%, that 20%, you know, from 80 to 100 is your profit. So you're making 20% with this formula. And if you're multiplying by 70%, which I explained the reasons why you would do that earlier, then you're 30% to get that 100%. So that 30% is kind of your profit margin. So I hope that makes kind of sense. Let's head over to the whiteboard and I'll break down several examples for you, and then we'll wrap this video up. Alrighty, so we're turning into Professor Sam here. I was gonna wear my glasses so I look a little bit more like Professor, but you can see there's a glare going on with the lights in the window. So we're just gonna have to take them off and not be Professor Sam. So we're gonna go over the formula that I just went over with you in my office. I'm gonna break it down for you here. So the first component of the formula, I'm just gonna put it all up here, is ARV. We discussed the first component. The second component we discussed is your rehab or repair. And the third component is the discount percentage formula. Hopefully I spelled everything right. So those are your 3 components. So as I kind of said earlier, this is a simple formula. You're not doing a bunch of different things. Yeah, you have to do some work to figure out your ARV, and yeah, you have to do some work to figure out your rehab, and you have to know what your discount percentage is and all that. I do get that there's a little bit of work that goes in all 3 of those things. But once you're comfortable with all 3 of those things, this formula is so easy. And like I keep saying, you can use it anywhere in any market condition, in any market cycle. So it's an awesome, simple formula that we use for every single property we buy. We buy almost 200 properties a year. We use this for every single one. So it's a great formula to use. So let's go over some examples for you so you kind of see what I'm talking about. And as you see the numbers, it'll get a lot simpler if it's not simple enough for you already. So how the formula works is, I'm going to break it down for you the first time, is you take your ARV, which is 1, you multiply it by your discount percentage, so by 3, and then you minus out your repairs, minus 2, and that is your offer. Your max allowable offer, or max offer allowable, however you want to do that. So that is the formula. ARV 1 times your discount percentage minus your rehab is your max allowable offer. So let's go over some examples now. You might be wondering what the heck I'm doing here. So we can erase this if it didn't make sense, but you might wonder what I'm doing here. So I just want to show you what we're going to use. The same ARV, or use the same rehab. We're just going to adjust your discount percentage, because that's something that might be a little bit newer. Most people know about ARVs, most people know about rehabs, but this discount percentage is the factor that you can move up or down depending on the deal, the area, what are the deals you're working on, how much profit you want to make, all that kind of thing. So let's just go over a quick simple example. So we're going to do a $200,000 ARV for all 3 of these examples. Alrighty, so we're gonna start, like I said, we're gonna start at 70% and move up to 80%. So these are the 3 that we typically do. Sometimes we'll adjust a little bit down or a little above, but here's what we do. So we're gonna do this one times 0.7 or 70% times 0.75 times 0.8. and then let's just say it's a $50,000 rehab. So then the rehab is gonna be the same. Actually writing much more legibly than I thought. So if you think this is not legible, this is the best I got. Alrighty, so pull the handy dandy calculator out. So this is where you see how simple it is. Once you know those, you can just type it in. So we're gonna type in 200,000 times 0.7, which equals 140,000 minus $50,000 rehab. So I didn't really do that math, but so that is a $90,000 max offer. And that is, you'll see in a minute, what you're gonna sell for is the same, what you're putting in is the same. So that's allowing for the most profit out of these three. The next one, let's do real quickly. 200 times 0.75 is 150, so minus 50 is 100. So this one you're paying $10,000 more. So the fact that the other two facts are the same, you're going to make $10,000 less, but that may be what it needs to get the deal. And you can't, I wish I could buy everything at this. You know, it's usually not the case because the market, even with all the stuff we're going through, is pretty competitive. So the last one is, we sometimes use this if we know we're gonna rehab it. I'll get into, if you're a wholesaler, what you do to this formula here in a minute, because this is an end buyer formula. So let's do this last one. 200, and I think I know this, but let's just be safe. I think it's 160. 200 times 0.8 equals 160,000 minus your 50, which is 110. So in this quick example, you see that we have a $20,000 difference just by adjusting this, not even that much, because all these numbers stay the same. We like to be conservative but realistic when determining this ARV. I don't like to say, it's a $200,000 house, but I'm going to run the formula at 180, and it needs 30, but I'm going to run the formula at 50. I want to have a realistic number, as well known as possible for these two columns, because your adjustment is right here. So we want to have as many concrete things. We don't want a bunch of moving parts. This is we're way low on, this we're way high on, and this we're messing with. I like to be realistic here, and if you're wanting to adjust for more profit, that's what you mess with right here. As you can see, it's a 20 grand swing over there. So now let's get into kind of a bonus tip. If you're a wholesaler and you don't want to hold these properties as rentals or fix them up and sell them yourself, use this formula. The deeper you buy, the better. And in most markets, you probably maybe want to use this number when selling it, or even this number when selling it. Say it's a $200,000 house and needs 50 grand, and try to sell it for 110, but you need to back out your profit. So if you want to make 10 grand, pretty simple. Take all of whichever one you're using. Like I said, usually probably these, leaving enough meat on the bone, but you're able to be competitively buy. It's pretty hard to buy at this percentage minus what you're wanting to make. So either of these. So if you're wanting to sell this thing for 110, back out what you're wanting to make it. If you're wanting to make 10 or 15, offer 95 or 100, so you can turn around and sell it for this number. Or if you're using this discount percentage, try and buy it 85 or 90 so you can make your 10 or 15. So that is a great formula that you can use no matter what you're doing. If you're holding them as rentals, if you're flipping them, or if you're just wholesaling them, getting them under contract and selling the contract, you can use this formula. If your end buyer, if you're a wholesaler, if your end buyer doesn't know this formula, send them to this video so they understand what it's about, or you should be able to explain it to them pretty easily. But just that's a little addition to this formula you can do if you're not keeping the property. So for a bonus tip, we gave you 2 double bonus tips in this video, so we appreciate a like for that. The banks we use will do 80%. So if you're burning the property and keeping your landlord and keeping it as a rental, my bank will give me 80%. So you can know when you're running your offer that you want to make sure that you're going to be all in at 80% here. So if it's a $200,000 house, my bank will give me $160,000. So I need to make sure when I'm buying it, that I'm buying it at this or less to give myself room. So try to maybe buy it at a little bit deeper so I know the max that my bank's going to give me. If your bank will give you 75%, you need to know that the max that your bank's going to give you is going to be $150,000. So you need to be all in after everything less than that. So you can kind of use this formula with what banks do with the BRRRR method is they appraise the property and give you between usually 75 and 80% of that appraisal. So that is a good way to double check your numbers and to make sure you're going to be using the BRRRR method properly and refinancing, getting all your money back. Alrighty guys, that's our video. I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe to our channel and roundhouse kick that like button if you haven't yet.
All around.
We're gonna do high fives, remember?
Oh yeah.
Peter Piper pie and pickled peppers, punching pansy Pam. What is that? Peter Piper picked a punch of punching peppers with Pam. Isn't that what like new makers do?
Yeah.
That was good too. Okay, all right. So then we'll do the first one. Well, I'm surprised when I do a decent take. Well, I'm not patting my back. It's just like, geez, that usually takes me 4 takes.
Man, your arms are going to be hurting for the push-ups.
I know. I do need to push ups.